As I listened back to this conversation with Gwyneth, I found myself thinking about a question that comes up in so much of the work that I do. And that is, how do we know what is truly ours? What is our thoughts, our fears, our beliefs, our reactions, even our truest desires? Many of us move through life assuming that whatever shows up inside us must belong to us. But what if some of what we're carrying was never ours in the first place? As therapists, healers, and highly sensitive people, we often absorb messages from our families, our relationships, our culture, and the world around us. And over time, those messages can become so familiar that we stop questioning them. They begin to feel like our identity. And in this conversation, Gwyneth speaks about intuition as a way of reconnecting with something deeper than our conditioning. And as I listened, I found myself reflecting on the parallels with nervous system healing. In my work, I often talk about predictive processing, the idea that the brain is constantly using past experiences to predict what is happening in the present. Sometimes those predictions are accurate. Sometimes they keep us locked inside old stories. So whether we call it intuition, inner wisdom, embodied knowing, or simply presence, there is something powerful about learning to pause long enough to ask the questions. Is this fear actually mine? Is this belief still true? Is this reaction coming from the present moment or from something older? For me, this is where healing truly begins. Not by forcing change, not by fixing ourselves, but by becoming curious enough to notice what we've been carrying and courageous enough to put some of it down. I hope you enjoy this conversation with Gwyneth. Welcome to the Spiritually Curious Therapist, where science, spirit, and the self come together in the art of healing. I'm Jody Silverman, psychotherapist, Reiki master, and fellow seeker. Here we explore how presence, compassion, and nervous system wisdom helps us reconnect with the heart, the body, and the soul. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Spiritually Curious Therapist. Today, we have with us Gwyneth Flack, and Gwyneth is the author of Limitless: Transform Your Life with Intuition and Creativity, a 2025 top 10 inspiring books pick in Aspire magazine. She is a transformational teacher and soul body alignment guide, passionate about helping people tap into their intuition, align with clear decision making, heal their lives, and cultivate deeper, more fulfilling relationships. That's awesome. Since 2007, Gwyneth has empowered thousands of professionals through private sessions, online courses, and retreats, offerings beginner to advanced intuitive development tools to help people thrive and become more grounded in today's fast-paced world. With a unique ability to bridge the gap between intuition and everyday life, which I love, Gwyneth specializes in guiding others to uncover their innate gifts, reduce self-critical thinking, and foster a life of harmony and purpose. Her work is rooted in authenticity, laughter, and soul-body communication. Gwyneth's love for spiritual exploration, nature, and heartfelt connection inspires her mission to help others embrace their limitless potential. Welcome.
Thanks so much. It's great to be here.
It's great to have you here. I am really excited for this conversation. There is so much I want to know about the work that you're doing and how it plays out with folks, what you're seeing in the work that you're doing. Is anything shifted over the last I can't believe it's been 6 years since the pandemic, but I'm always curious about that. But maybe we can just start with your story. What first drew you to this work, and what has shaped the way you understand healing today?
Yeah, great question. So I was a very intuitive child, and I always like to say every child is really intuitive. And so it wasn't just my experience, but as a child, I was very intuitive and I was always I was so often I was seeing people on two levels. I was seeing them as who they were in terms of the veneer or the outside presentation to the world, who they were as the body personality, if you will, and then, or even who they were trying to be to survive in the world. And then I was also seeing them as like with a different quality of energy. I was seeing them on what I would say, like on the soul personality level or on the soul level or as energy, as consciousness. I'm just throwing out different words because
Yeah.
different people relate to different words. All there's so many different ways to talk about the same thing. And so I was seeing them on two levels. And so to me, that was really normal. And I didn't really realize that's something that we lose as we get older. Circling back to what I was saying about how babies and toddlers and young children, they're so intuitive. They're seeing so much more that's going on with people, but they don't always have the words to describe it, or they don't always know how to put it all together. But in my case, sometimes I would, like, for example, my mom brought me to her office party, and I just went up to one of her colleagues and I said, I was like 8 years old, and I said, "Oh, you look really different on the outside than you do on the inside." And that was just my
Mm.
innocent perception. I wasn't doing it to be funny, I wasn't doing it to be annoying or anything like that. I thought that this person would be so happy to be seen, and that is why. So I was giving that information to that person as a gift. And what I was saying is I was offering a healing. I see you. I see who you are on the outside, the veneer to survive, that this person was very somebody that really had had a difficult childhood and then had gone into the professional world and had really had to put up the sort of outer veneer. But I could see, in essence, the love that this person was. I could see their brightness. I could see their consciousness. And so I thought this person would be really happy that I was seeing them. And he was amused. He was a little bit like, what is this? Who is this person? Because he got what I was saying, but he couldn't fully maybe process what I was saying, but he got what I was saying. And then later on, and so my mom heard me say this, and so she later on, she validated my experience because to me it was just in some ways like another normal day. As a child, I was walking around in the world intuitively seeing people and noticing the suffering that they were going through, but noticing also who they really were, their incredible levels of, let's say, creative energy or creativity or their kindness and love. Whereas on the outside, they might have looked very different. And if you just judged on the outside, you might have been like, oh, that looks like a really tough person, or that looks like a really angry person, or whatever it is. But people are very different on the inside. And so that was my foundation. But also, if I rewind further back than that, I did have a near death experience when I was 4. And from that experience, I that was a very validating experience, as funny as that might sound. That was a very validating experience for me because prior to that experience, I had felt like I wasn't being seen. I
Mm.
felt like I was just being seen as a body walking around in the world and just treated as a body. And so we're really here to look deeper than that. And so when I had that near death experience, I actually had the realization, oh, I'm not just the body that's walking around that people are interacting with and seeing. I have more capability, just like everybody does. I have more capability than that. There's more to me. There's more dynamic levels of awareness. There's more wisdom than what shows. There's more there that's beyond just the intellect or the intellectual mind or the physical growth of the body. So basically, by the time I got to be 8 and I was giving that reading to the person at the party, I was giving what I thought everybody wanted, which was to tap into that deeper part of themselves, or that more dynamic part of themselves, or that more capable part of themselves, however you want to talk about it. And so that was my gift that I was offering, because I was like, wow, that would be the highest gift that you could give to somebody is to help them with that. Because, in essence, to me, that's spiritual growth, or what you might call it personal growth, or whatever way you want to talk about it. But it's growth and it's expansion. And it allows us to become more and more aware, to access more and more levels of really who we are. And so then later on, I ended up just taking classes, spiritual growth classes, meditation classes, intuitive development classes, and I was just taking it because I loved it. To me, it was just really validating all these parts of myself that were beyond just my intellectual learning. Sure, I'd gotten a master's degree and done all the intellectual learning, and I was like, okay, there's really more going on than this. And so that helped me to start to remember some of what I'd forgotten when I was
Mm.
a child, because you tend to walk away from that and forget it as time progresses. And then when I was taking classes, I started to remember, oh yeah, I remember now all my experiences start to make sense.
Yeah.
And then people just started to ask me to teach. So that's how I came to be a teacher. Was I didn't plan on being a teacher. Actually, creative writing was really my focus. I wasn't thinking about teaching, and people said, "Hey, will you just teach us a class? You seem like you're doing really well. What are you doing?" And so I was trying to tell people, "Hey, why don't you go take a class, whatever, fly out to California like I'm doing, take a class." And people were saying to me instead, "Why don't you just teach us?" And so that's how it all started. And I just taught one class thinking, I'll just teach you one class. I'll just teach you a little bit of what I know. And then just and then another group asked me to teach them. And so it's a long story, but there
And
you
no, it's amazing, and I love when stories play out this way because it's the ones that we never thought would happen, and that just from the perspective of synchronicity, and if you believe in some level of fate or destiny that this is what you are meant to do and you didn't know it. So the universe just keeps putting things in front of you until you accept it and fall into step. So I think that that's a beautiful story, and I really appreciate we we tend to, all of us tend to have these experiences when we're young in some way, shape, or form, because like you said, we're way more open, we're way more plastic, we're way more innocent. All of our protective patterns haven't been set in place yet. But as we become older, those protective patterns get reinforced over and over again, and we forget. We forget what it's like to be in connection with our true selves. And so for you to have the experience later on in life that brought you back to that, was you had to go through life, be human, and do all the things to get to a place where you were able to reconnect with what you knew to be true, is what it sounds like.
Yes, absolutely. And the other thing that I remember is when I was a child, and of course, I was really creative and I was really intuitive and very much interested in helping people in whatever way I could. But I also remember having a lot of fears.
Mm.
And so that plays into now in my life because, or further on along, because when I was a child, I was picking up because I was so intuitive, but I didn't process that as being intuitive. I was just being a kid, right? And so you're just being yourself. But I was walking around, and because I was so intuitive, I wasn't always aware of just how intuitive I was. And in the process of being sensitive, I was picking up on other people's fears,
Mhm.
literally not my fear. Like I would worry, oh, the house is going to burn down. Like fears would come to me, all different kinds of fears that really, in hindsight, I was very clear. That's not my fear. That is literally something that I picked up from my parents. Because, of course,
Mhm.
what parent doesn't worry about that? But
Yeah.
lots of different fears that I was carrying around that aren't the kind of fears that just that a kid comes up with on their own kind of thing. And
Mhm.
so that really was an important part of the process too, because when I then dove into my own conscious spiritual growth, and then over time as I became a teacher, I started to be able to help people to recognize what they were carrying around that wasn't theirs, that they had picked up just by being sensitive. And
Yeah.
so it's I absolutely love as a teacher helping people to release what they've been carrying around. Notice it. Just notice it with their using just their awareness on any level. And you notice it, and then you start to be able to ask the question, is this mine?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
then, and then to be able I love to teach people ways of releasing that then, because when you let go of that, it's an incredibly freeing feeling, and it opens up more space for you to have your own authentic signature of energy, or your own authentic way of expressing yourself or communicating or creating. Because every time we basically clear out what we've been carrying around, we could call it the weight of the world. We pick it up helping people at work and helping family and just watching the news. We're constantly picking up stuff. And then a lot of times we don't differentiate. Is this my energy? Is this not my energy? But when we do, then we can actually we actually have a choice, a conscious choice. Do I want to keep carrying this around? Probably not. It's not benefiting me. I might pick it up again later, but I'm recognizing it and letting it go. And so that was really freeing for me too, because when I was a child, I had my own ways of recognizing things that bothered me and releasing them, but being able to do it far more consciously in a more grounded, embodied way as an adult was really freeing, because then every time you release what's not yours, then you have new, fresh, updated space to release, to create something new, essentially to create something new. What do you want to create in your life? So,
Yeah, I have so much coming through around this. And one of the things in response to what you just said is this idea if you are carrying a whole bunch of books, like if you imagine, we used to do this, a mentor of mine had this practice she would do in the therapy room with people who were like holding on to things that they no longer really needed, was like she would just take all the books off her bookshelf and just start stacking them in their arms.
I love that.
And right, and so you're carrying around all these books, and as long as you're carrying around those books, you can't read anything new, right?
Yeah,
Because you're carrying all those books with you. And emotions are meant to be expressed. That's it. They are sensations that show up in our body that we then make meaning out of. And but the actual sensation itself, it's got a beginning, a middle, and an end. And part of the problem is because we've got these analytical brains, is we start to feel something, and then we pop up into our head and put a name to it and put a thought to it and start to analyze it. And all that, the emotion itself never fully expresses and never fully leaves our energy body or our physical body. And so, or our emotional body, depending on how, on which body you ascribe to, or any or all of them, right? Because it's happening
yeah,
on every plane.
yeah,
I love what you're saying. And I think it's so important, especially for people who are highly sensitive, because people with sensitive nervous systems and overactive mirror neurons, you can walk by somebody and feel the energy that's coming off of them, and it becomes a part of your system. And then you start to make meaning out of it without realizing, like you were saying, that wasn't even mine. Like I'm feeling angry and I don't even know, I don't even know why. I don't even know what happened. Oh, I remember so and blah, blah, blah. Our brain will find reasons why we have that sensation. So I love what you're saying. And I think it's such an important skill for people to learn and be aware of and be able to navigate, because yeah, then that opens up space for awe and joy and magic and like all the wonderful things that are out there in the world and inside of us as well. I do have a quick question though.
yes.
I'm wondering if you can define intuition from your perspective, just so that we're all on the same page in terms of what you mean when you talk about intuition.
Yes, so we're all intuitive, and really fundamentally, it's our system for finding our deeper answers. Our intuition provides us each with the ability to find answers for our deeper questions, the kinds of questions that we can't get an answer for in the intellectual world. And when I say in the intellect, our intellect is our learned knowledge. And so a lot of times we have questions that only we can answer. And we have to find what is that for us? What is the most aligned answer? And so our intuition is there to provide us. So it's like our connection to our higher self, or it's our connection to our inner wisdom. And
Mhm.
it's that part of us that's really differentiated from our intellect, which is also really important. It's just a different aspect of ourselves. And but a lot of times what happens is we mix up the two.
Yeah.
We mix up the two. And so that's why it's so beneficial to practice being intuitive, because we practice being intellectual. We practice with our intellect starting from kindergarten, learning how math and reading and editing and all these different things. But really, our intuition, that part of ourselves that can give us really important, deep answers and show us what's really aligned for us. Because I could say to somebody, hey, should I move to Hawaii or Connecticut or England? And the person could say, here's what Hawaii's like, according to the encyclopedia. And here's what Connecticut's like, here's what England, but what's aligned for me that's going to give me the larger experience of what's orchestrated. So I believe that we have an alignment where things are more orchestrated if we move in that alignment. Can we move outside of that alignment? Yes, we can. And we all have, and we all do sometimes. And that's also a great learning experience, because we take detours and we go, oh, I actually don't think I want to do that detour that I'm on. I think I'm going to circle back, or I'm going to get back on my path. I didn't listen to my guidance in that situation. That took me in that direction. That's a great learning experience too. It's how we learn.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. As you were saying that, I was thinking, oftentimes we learn from what doesn't fit versus
Yes,
from what does. Yeah.
absolutely. It's just
Yeah.
when sometimes somebody gives us advice, like we ask somebody for advice genuinely because we're really looking for an answer, and somebody gives us advice, and then we know in that moment, thanks, but that wasn't the right advice. That clarifies that it's
Yep, I love that. I love that. Okay, so what I'm hearing is that when you talk about intuition, you're talking about that connection with whether we want to call it our higher selves, our inner wisdom, our true self, but it's that alignment. It's what feels right versus what our brain might think is right or analyze or make decisions around.
yes, exactly, because that part of ourselves can't help but be in past time. The intellectual part of ourselves is holding all these past experiences and the images in our minds, quite literally, the mental image pictures associated with that. And the intuitive part of ourselves, we access that when we become, for a moment, we pause, we have a moment. I was going to say when we become present, which is true, but that doesn't mean we have to be present all the time, and it's a practice.
Mhm.
We access present time, and from present time is where we access the intuitive part of ourselves. But otherwise it's really easy to get ping ponged like a ping pong ball or whatever into just the past experiences and what that means and the associations with that. And so that's great if we want to just use it for certain things, but it's just a different function and for a different reason.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. When you said that, I had a little bit of a dropping in and an aha moment where when we are using our intellect and we're not necessarily connected with our intuition, our brain is predicting because that's what it does all day long, right?
Yeah.
It's constantly predicting and then creating actions based on those predictions. And like you said, those predictions are all based on our past experiences and everything our brain knows. And what I'm hearing you say is, in getting in touch with our intuition is stepping outside of those predictions and just dropping in the present moment, free of the past, free of what of the shoulds or even the emotions. It's just like in that moment, what feels right.
Yes, and it's a great observational space.
Yeah.
So, as we're observing from present time, we can't really observe in a from neutrality if we're just in our intellect because we're actually just then reflecting on what's in the past and that jumble of experiences. And so really being able to observe is innately connected to our intuition. So when we're in that space, we're just observing without making a judgment. We're just observing what is and noticing what's going on, noticing with our awareness. Oh, look at that. What am I seeing? What new information is showing up? What great idea just came to me? Where did that come from? Oh,
Mhm.
wow. Our intuitive knowing will give us incredible ideas, whether it's an idea for our business or whether it's an idea for helping our child or communicating with our partner or what's really important for us in terms of our priorities. We're just observing, just like when we're in nature, when we're walking in nature and we're grounded in our bodies. That's why nature's so amazing. Even a park, like a person can live in a city, it doesn't mean you can't access nature. You could be in that space connecting and being grounded, and then all of a sudden you're observing from present time. You might be just looking at a tree and all of a sudden, wow, the tree is so beautiful. I never really noticed the way the leaves are on that tree. But it's the same thing with observing something really important in our lives. All of a sudden we have an insight about our career. What is it that's really been bothering me about my career? Is it the people I work with? No, wow, I'm seeing this a whole other thing that's going on. And so it's a really beautiful, fun, rewarding space to be in because you're just observing and you're being gentle with yourself. From that space, you're not judging yourself, you're not judging what is, you're observing, you're receiving information. It's a receptive space. And so we're raised to be in a doing space. And that's the intellect at work in the world, the very sort of masculine energy of do. And then, oh, once in a while, maybe when you're on vacation, you can just be. But our intuition, if we tap into that just a few times a day and start to build a friendship with it, a few minutes here and a few minutes there, it doesn't have to be a big thing. We're moving into that more receptive space where we're actually receiving information. That information is just coming to us. We're not going out to it to grab it, we're allowing it to show up just like a great idea, right? Sometimes we are searching and searching for an idea, for a great idea, for a solution, for a problem. And the moment that we give it a little space and walk away from it, energetically or physically, both, either, then boom, it shows up. The intellect is all about effort. And that's good if we're learning, we're practicing our multiplication tables and all that kind of stuff. We're
Yeah.
in medical school, whatever it might be. But really, we want to get out of effort to access that part of ourselves. It's effortless if we
Mm.
allow it to be. Then we move into more receptivity with it.
Can you say more about receptivity? Because what I'm thinking when you say that is this idea of consciousness, and consciousness is everywhere, and that everything exists in consciousness, including us. We are just parts of this greater whole. And so everything we're like searching for or needing or wanting or no, it's all out there. We have access. There's limitless possibilities
Mhm.
and potential. But oftentimes we get so stuck in what we know and what our experience is at. And I had this one mentor, a different mentor. I love my mentors always have really powerful little things that they say that stick with me. But he would say, there's option A and there's option B. And then there's option C, which is the one we don't even know exists yet. And I come back to that all the time, and it never fails because an option C always shows up.
Yeah, I love what you're saying. That makes me think of what I call when we get stuck in a dichotomy, when we get stuck
Mhm.
in duality. So a lot of times we think, is it going to be this or is it going to be that? And two things that are, is it this or that? And there's nothing in between. The moment we arrive here on earth through our mother's amazing body, we start to experience that dichotomy of
Mhm.
it's this or it's that. It's black or it's white. There's no gray. And so, yeah, that's what you were saying makes me think about that there is, it's amazing how often there's another. You said A, B, or C, how often there's a C when we can move out of the dichotomy. And so, how we do that is starting to release our ideas, our thoughts, our emotions that keep us sure that it's got to be one or the other. Do you like me or do you not like me? Which is it? Kind of thing. You know what I mean? So, yeah. So, and then we start to get out of that and we realize, wow, there's this whole other, it's almost like a whole other dimension or just a whole other way of seeing things, a whole other way to bring our awareness to something that's really not on either end of that dichotomy.
Yeah, and I think that's so important. And even as you were saying that, my brain expanded a little bit further in terms of how we then project that dichotomy onto other people
Mhm.
and how so this is a question that comes up a lot. So I'll preface it with this. So a lot of people will ask, how do I know the difference between my intuition and anxiety? Because a lot of times people think they're the same things. My intuition told me that, blah, 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 blah. And really it's their anxiety or their intellect or whatever we want to name it that's driving that thought or that awareness or that knowing. And oftentimes it's because we are projecting what we know, these constructs and these concepts that we have onto other people without realizing that everybody has a different perspective, right? That option C, it's actually like C to infinity because there's any possibilities are out there in the world. And so what other people are experiencing is often not what we are believing that they are. And I'm just curious. I know I just took this a whole other step further, but you made me think of it in terms of like how we move through the world and make the choices that we do, and how we can use that connection to our inner selves, higher self, just to stay really present, even in relationship with other people.
Yeah, so often as people, we're because once again, we're so intuitive and it's not just when we're little, it's when we're adults walking around in the world. Sometimes we're looking at somebody walking toward us. Let's say we're walking down the street, somebody's walking toward us, and maybe that person makes us feel anxious, for example, and we can't tell. I don't know, let's just say, let's set up, it's at night and we're by ourselves and somebody's walking toward us and we start to feel anxious. Is that our intuition telling us, run, get out of there? Or is that us just tuning into the to a set of judgments, pastime experiences, pastime things we've been told, outdated belief systems we are given by our family and culture? What is that? And so, yeah, so that's really a practice of differentiating because it could be either one, but when we start to get into more of a everyday communication with our intuition, then in that situation, we can start to quickly know, yeah, that is my intuition, or nope, that is really just a whole set of feelings and thoughts that I've been carrying around that are outdated belief systems. And the other thing is sometimes, whether we know it or not, we're intuitively reading people. This is where it gets really dodgy or really confusing because sometimes we're just reading what's stuck on the outside of a person. As weird as this sounds, like a person who's walking through the world, and let's say a lot of people have thrown energy at that person unconsciously, and then we, as an intuitive person that we don't realize how intuitive, sometimes we're just reading the energy that's stuck on the outside of them. And that's not, once again, that's not actually who they are on the inside. they could look really scary, for example. I remember one time when my daughter was so little, she was like 6 weeks old or something. The biggest, scariest looking man showed up at my house and knocked on the front door. He must have been like 7 feet tall, and he just looked so rough and so tough. And I was alone at the house with my 6 week old daughter. And this was a great learning experience because I went to the door and my heart literally was like,
Mhm.
and he had just come up to actually ask permission, something to do with our land or whatever. So he had come up to ask permission for something. And the second he saw me standing there with the babies, I love little babies. And oh my gosh, I remember when my daughter was little. And so that's an example of tapping into, in that moment I went into like protective mom mode. But it's amazing how often we just look and we don't really. And so was that anxiety was not accurate in relation to that person, but I was accessing a whole bunch of other things. But we start to just, the more we access our intuition on a daily basis all the time, not just saving it for the big events, that's where we really run into trouble, is if we don't access it and then we save it all up for the most important decisions. And then we feel like, oh, wow, okay, I feel lost now. And yeah, I think that's the practice, is differentiating. And being able to say hello and communicate with our bodies. So I think it's, the more we become grounded in our
Mhm.
bodies, more able to live in our bodies as a practice of being grounded, the more we can start to communicate with our bodies and go, "Oh, I'm feeling this anxiety and it's showing up in my gut, or it's showing up in my solar plexus. What is this? Is this really something that's mine, or is this really something that I picked up along the way? And can I start to therefore release it?" A lot of times, just bringing our awareness to something
Yep.
is 50% of the game, because once we're aware of it, then we can gently start to release it, not resist it, because what we resist in our space tends to persist. So if we give it space to release, that's more helpful than if we think, I got to get rid of this. I don't like this feeling. I got to get rid of this. So it's really a big difference. It sounds funny. Oh, what's the difference? But it's actually part of if we just say hello and we're just gentle with ourselves, we just think of ourselves as just letting go or releasing, rather than going into the effort of the intellect to make something go away, get rid of it, push it away kind of thing. It's really creates two different habitats for healing, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah. And it reminds me, going back to what we were talking about earlier, of this, that idea of like emotions being sensations that are meant to be expressed, and really nothing more than that. And a lot of people will say, everyone tells me I just need to release it, but I don't know how. Like, how? What do I do? How do I release it? And we've got all sorts of like intentional ways that we can do that, right? Whether it's through exercise or tapping or qigong, there's ways to move energy, and journaling. There are ways to take what's inside, transmute it, and release it out into the universe. There's rituals. And at the end of the day, what we're doing in all of those instances is just being with the sensation and giving it an opportunity to just run through. A lot of people will say, okay, it's sadness, but what do I do with it? And we're just gonna create some space for it. And that's hard. It's hard for people to just allow it and not do something with it. Going back to what you were saying in terms of that masculine energy of, we are cultured to do versus allow and be, which is I think what you're talking about. That's how we connect with that intuitive part of ourselves.
Yeah, I love that. Giving space really is incredible, because if you give something space, it's no longer taking over the whole space. It
Right.
becomes, and it's like it would be then a drop of oil in a huge ocean or something like that. And so you give it space, and all of a sudden, in essence, it becomes a much smaller part of the whole picture of what's going on. And all of us, it's like shrinking it down in a way, but you're doing it in a reverse way. You're just giving space
Mhm.
and accessing more of what is, and it starts to move into perspective, and we really start to pull our light out of it. So when we get what I would call stuck on a mental image picture, stuck on like a feeling or thought that's associated with some past experience, if we're able to just first recognize, wow, maybe this is just a picture, it's not mine, and then I'm just going to give it more and more space, then it really starts to change our relationship to it, because we have a tendency as humans, we have a tendency to either override things that are difficult, or we match those things and become that emotion like a game show winner. Whatever, right? Or what we're watching the news, we feel terrible, whatever it would be. And of course, we know what overriding is. We tend to override. So when we hit something we don't like, we resist it, we override it, or we become it. So those three ways are all the more challenging ways, and we all do it. It's all a process, right? But the more beneficial way is that we start to become more neutral to it and just
Mhm.
observe it and and once again, give it space within ourselves. But yeah, we match energy everywhere we go. So that's like a starting point where if we can recognize when we walk into a situation, oh my gosh, I just matched the energy of this meeting. And this meeting is like not a very happy meeting. Maybe I can unmatch from this energy and start to establish what energy do I want to be in instead, which we can visualize that, or we can give
Mhm.
ourselves that as a gift, as a quality of energy, and recognize that we really do match energy. And so when we match energy, what are we doing at that point? The resisting or the overriding or or if we observe that it just happened, then we have more space to move. We have more range of motion, if you will. We can then establish what our own energy space would be and go into that meeting and sit in the meeting, and the meeting can be in the space that it's in, which is maybe not an easy space, but at the same time, we're having our own differentiated experience rather than just dropping into the energy of the group energy that's being maybe set by the leader that's not in a
Mhm.
good space.
Mhm.
Everybody else is matching. Let's
Yeah.
let's not even talk about the larger world right now. So
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yep, yeah, and it can happen. I've been in plenty of meetings like that, and also, yeah, on a world
yeah,
scale, large as this planet, we can all kind of
yeah.
tap into some of what people are walking around with. So how would you help people, especially helpers and healers who spend a lot of time with other people who are really carrying around some difficult emotions? Their energy might be such that they are projecting those emotions onto others as well. And as a therapist, I could spend 8 hours a day in sessions with folks. How would you help me? What are some concrete ways that I could start to really connect with that intuitive part of myself going into each day, or maybe even throughout the day? Because what I'm hearing you say, and I don't want to lose this because I think it's important, is that connecting with our intuition is like building a muscle. And even preparing for, let's say, I don't know, maybe we're preparing for a big hike. And so we hike a little bit every day so that when that big hike comes, we're ready for it. We don't just go out and hike because we would run out of steam, right? So it's important to, I imagine, to do practices, consistent practice is really important.
Yeah, definitely. And so you were asking me, what do I recommend for somebody who's out there being the healer they are, and incredibly caring, nurturing person out working with people. Of that is why I wrote my book, and I put 20 exercises in it for exactly what you are asking. So all that exercises, the intuitive tools I teach are designed for they're really designed for us to be able to take care for ourselves and to be able to manage and handle the energy of the world as caretakers out there, being mental health therapists or being nurses or doctors or school teachers or school administrators, whatever it is. And so really I've spent my whole 20-year career teaching just that, is tools for people to be able to grow spiritually while also which to me really starts with being able to manage the energy of the world, tools to be able to replenish yourself and recharge and become more embodied, because then you're creating that habitat to be able to have the space to be able to grow more and expand your awareness in new ways, or take your next steps with creating what you want in your life. And so, yes, every day for me certainly starts with getting grounded, because I feel like if I'm grounded in my body, and I just taught this, I was teaching at a retreat in Washington State in December. And like I was teaching a nurse how to just a basic way of grounding that I teach. And then she went and used it working in a very difficult nursing job and was like, wow, this was incredible. It made all this difference. And so I think that really was becoming grounded means that we're really living in our body. And it's really easier said than done, because once again, it's a practice.
Yeah.
It's a practice over time. My experience of being grounded when I was first learning to ground myself 20 years ago versus what it is now, it's a whole different experience. And yet it's instantly helpful at the same time. When we're grounded in our body, it makes it so much easier to manage our energy and be in communication with our body as well. What does my body need right now? Because if we're out of our body and we're off, stress sends us out of our body. Of course, trauma sends us out of our body. Everything practically sends us out of our body. So it's a process of coming back to and deciding, I'd like to be grounded. I just noticed I wasn't grounded. Okay, I'm just going to come back and be grounded and practice it a little more. And then it's so much easier to handle the energy as somebody that's out there in the world helping people every day. It's way easier to handle the energy of the world when we're really guiding our own vehicle, or guiding our own vessel. And we're really meant to be able to communicate with our bodies, but it's hard to communicate with our bodies when we're ungrounded. And the world is a very ungrounded place. Nature is very grounded, of course, but humanity is very ungrounded situation. And so we tend to match humanity and unground. And then it's a little harder to guide our vessel.
I hear people call them meat suits.
I was thinking of Captain Picard at the helm of the Starship Enterprise. But
Yeah,
yeah, people say meat suits. That always makes me laugh too.
I know. Yeah, I really appreciate what you're saying. And we're starting to wrap up here. And I love where we're coming back to, which is how important embodiment is when you are on a spiritual journey and working to connect with your intuition. Because oftentimes, at least in my experience, people tend to see spirituality as something outside of themselves. And we really can't access that intuition unless we are connected with our physical body, because our physical body is what gives us the information. And so getting to know and understand the sensations that arise in our body as just sensations and working with them is a way to really connect with those parts of ourselves so that we can get the accurate information that's aligned with whatever our soul script happens to be. And I just want to say this one last little piece, because I'm listening to you and we're talking about grounding. And I think a lot of us talking, we're like, especially as therapists and healers, we're all about, you have to ground, you have to ground. I feel ungrounded, or I feel really grounded. What does that even mean? Like, what does it mean to be grounded? And so just coming back to this idea, and you let me know if this resonates with you, but it starts with our senses.
Yeah.
Just noticing the chair beneath us, behind us, our feet on the ground, noticing what we smell, noticing what we hear, what we see, and really being with it. Not just a quick, oh, I smell this, I see that, right? But really taking it in and allowing our nervous system to intentionally take in that information and noticing what it feels like, what sensations arrive in our body as we do that. Does that track with how you teach
Yeah.
grounding?
Absolutely, because I feel like sometimes when we think about spiritual growth, it's this whole sort of out of body thing, but it's really, to me, it's not meant to be that at all. We're here to live in our bodies, be connected, and we're really the parent for our bodies. Us, this conscious presence, we're incredibly powerful creative beings, way more than we give ourselves credit for. And we're really meant to parent our bodies don't necessarily know how to respond until we have that communication. We're a team. I've got this. Don't worry. You can just calm right down and you can know that you are being cared for. And so I think that, I don't know, but I just feel like we're really, our spiritual growth and our physical body, it's meant to happen together, not as two separate things.
Mhm.
Body's growing and this is happening to my body. And then, oh, my spiritual growth is over here. Maybe that was some of the old ways, but now it's all coming together. It's all one and the same. And with the outcome being this teamwork and this communication that starts to happen naturally the more that we decide. It starts with a decision, really, a decision. I would like to be grounded and find ways to ground. I'd like to tap into my intuition. I'd like to know more about what my body is asking or what my body needs from me. Or I'd like to be friends with my body. A lot of times we think of our body as just something we have to deal with. But it's like we want to be best friends with our body in essence saying I love you as from the incredible bright being that we are. And then our body naturally starts to just sync up and harmonize more.
Yeah, that is so beautiful. So if people want to find you, Gwyneth, what's the easiest way for them to get in touch with you? Or where can they find out more about you?
They can go to my website, gwynethflack.com, and they can send me an email. They check out, I have a class coming up, a 4 series online class of intuitive tools. It starts on May 2nd and registration's live on the website. There's um, multiple other offerings on the website. Send me an email, say hello, let me know that where you heard me talking. It's fun to hear that somebody heard you on a podcast and they want to know more.
Yeah. And if people are interested in your book, where can they get your book?
They can order it through their local bookstore. They can definitely get it on Amazon.
Okay,
Yeah, so Amazon or local favorite bookstore or bookshop.org, whatever, wherever you like to get your books.
excellent. And I'm going to put all those links in the show notes so that people have easy access to them.
Great.
Gwyneth, thank you so much for your time. This was a wonderful, enlightening conversation, and I really appreciate all the work that you're doing out there in the world.
Thank you so much for having me on your delightful podcast. It was so fun speaking with you.
Awesome. One thing that stayed with me after this conversation was Gwyneth's discussion about carrying fears that didn't belong to her. Whether you understand that through an energetic lens, a nervous system lens, or both, I think many of us can relate. We inherit stories, we absorb expectations, we learn what feels safe and what doesn't. And over time, those adaptations become so familiar that we mistake them for who we are. One of the questions I find myself asking clients again and again is, what if this isn't who you are? What if this is simply what your system learned? What if this is what your brain is predicting is going to happen, opposed to what is really real? Because it was learned, it can actually be relearned. And if it was acquired, it can be released. That doesn't mean we become someone new. It means we uncover who we've been underneath the adaptations all along. Thanks for listening, and until next time, stay curious.